All right, everyone. Welcome again to our next episode of Church Ops 500, where we continue to tackle ideas, things that are really challenging in our environment, specifically for church operations. And again, as we've talked, man, the titles range greatly. Man, the jobs that you do, we say all the time, man, it's toilet paper all the way up to managing Sunday morning services. So I've got a special guest here today that I'm really excited about. I think he's going to bring some great content. But as always, just a reminder, please make sure if you're enjoying the content, please rate it, whatever platform you're using. Rate the content, leave comments, and definitely look forward to joining on our Facebook group. We love to have questions there. So if you've got a question after this podcast that you want to ask, definitely send it my way. I'll try my best, if it's specifically to our guest, try my best to get him to respond, and we continue to grow and cultivate knowledge for what we do. For ultimately, it's a love for the Lord and a desire to see his church lifted up, doing amazing things, and operations administration being a key component of being able to do that well. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube page. Also can view the content there. Without further ado, we are jumping in. I want to briefly introduce Pastor Mike Cantrell. Man, he is a hero of the faith. He's a role model for me. Can't say enough great things about this guy. Man, and he gives some of the best bear hugs known to man. So if you ever get to meet him in person, man, letting him give you a big hug is next level love. So Pastor Mike, man, he comes from just a high school football background, and he's like, that's claim to fame. He goes from there to being a pastor. And he's worn many hats, which is another reason why I think he's great for this podcast, from campus ministry to several number 2 church operations positions, man, even church planning himself, being a senior pastor. So he's seen all sides of the equation, and even missions director for our global family. So if you've never heard about us, man, Every Nation is our global ministry. I encourage you to look them up as well. Just a great family, a lot of great leaders doing amazing things. And of course, now in a new position that I'm hoping we'll get to hear a little bit about today. It's church planting pastor and groups pastor at our Mid-Cities church in good old Texas. So excited to hear from him. Man, he's a self-proclaimed church rat. He's just in the church all the time. He's probably, have no doubt, if he's anything like me, he's one of the first people there, one of the last people to leave, always looking for new opportunities to grow things and to shift how we do ministry. One of the things I love about him, he's a family man, married, 5 kids. He's living in the afterglow at this point. I don't know if I've shared on here. I've got 3 little ones. He's living on the other side of that glory. So he's got an adult child, 2 in college, a high schooler, and an 8th grader. Now, when Mike isn't working at the church, when he's not here doing all of the operations, he enjoys bass fishing and watching football. So we got a couple of bones we can definitely pick when it comes to football teams. I don't know if he supports the right ones or not, which are any that I support. Those are the good ones. We'll have to go back and forth later and see. So, man, when he's not doing that, he's back in his first love, analyzing and working as an analyst for high school football there in the area. So without further ado, Pastor Mike Cantrell, welcome.
Van, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be on Church Ops 500. I really appreciate what you're doing to serve kind of this niche area in the church that doesn't get a lot of glory and isn't always talked about. And then even that, you're refining that down to, people that, may not be part of mega churches, but are doing a lot with a little. And so I really appreciate that. And hopefully today we can encourage those out there that are growing in that role and want to learn and want to continue to do better in that. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
Come on. So we'll jump in because I know we can sit and talk all day. Every time I get him on the phone, we'll jump into a 10-minute conversation that turns into a 45-minute because we just get into this and we're passionate about it. So, Pastor Mike, man, give us just kind of the highlights of your story. How did you go from, man, on a football field coaching to jumping into all things operations, all things church?
Yeah, thanks. I gave my life to Christ as a high school football coach, and part of what got me into teaching and coaching, and some would say I was a much better coach than a teacher, was that I really had a heart to serve people. I had a really heart to make others great, help people reach their destiny. And I'll talk a little bit about the correlation between high school coaching, what it was for me, and the church world. I didn't grow up in church. I had zero church background. So I get right with God, and just a few years later, plugged into a role at church, in a smaller growing church, and realizing, man, there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to happen. And the number one guy can't do it all. So the number two guy has to. You talked about how I got into it. One of my, I ever said if I ever wrote a book, it would either be the title or one of the chapters. And I call that the art of showing up. It seems like if you show up enough and if you stay long enough, stuff is just going to come to you. And so I guess the biblical term, Van, for that would be faithfulness, but I think God was faithful even when I wasn't. But just showing up long enough, things started adding to my job description. I didn't know they were called church operations. I didn't know all those things, but it was, that's what it was. And so in a lot of different roles, as you mentioned, I've served in, I've had a lot of different, number two roles, executive pastor role. I told you, people used to ask me, what's the executive pastor? I said, it's the person who executes what no one else wants to do. And so again, that's why I appreciate you being on here. So yeah, that got me going, and I've done, I've been the senior pastor of church. I've planted church. I've done a lot of different things. My role now is less ops. I have a little bit more of a specific role that maybe we can get into later. But you know what? Like once a church rat, that's what I call myself. It's like, and you're right, I'm usually the first one here and I'm usually the last one to leave. You can't get out of it. I think sometimes it's like, how do you know you're called to do this? I think what you're called to do is what you think about in the shower. That sounds weird, but it's like most people, they're thinking about the dream vacation. They're thinking about this, and crazy people like me and you and the other friends we know out there, they're thinking about how can I make the church better? While we're mindlessly doing our thing, we're thinking about church problems, how we can make it better, how we can make it smoother, what we can do to make it run better. And I think that really defines, you can say, am I called? Because it's really it's what I think about all the time.
Yeah, come on. I love it. So many great things in there. I think that idea of being called is so important. And that faithfulness, that showing up, I think that's a huge piece of so many people's story when they find themselves in this position. Man, are we willing to be faithful? Are we willing to show up? Man, the toilets need to be cleaned. Okay. Man, the trash needs to be emptied. Okay. It's just that willingness to continue to do that. And I think we all end up kind of picking up titles along the way. One that I have now, and man, I'm continually seeing it follow me around, this can-do Van. It's like, are we those people who are willing to show up and do whatever it takes to be able to allow ministry to happen well, those behind the scenes places. So I think for anyone who's listening, just be encouraged as you listen. If you hear bits and pieces of your story in this, know that there are so many roads to this position. But if you find yourself in a place where you care more, man, about whether or not the lights are on, the bulbs are changed, man, whether or not there's a great presence in the place, than you do making sure you learn all the worship songs, man, there might be a place there for you where you go, this is something that I can be called to. This is something I can be a part of. And I would dare say that out of many of the things that grow the church, I believe that one of the things that can stunt and challenge the growth of the church is poor operational mindset, is poor administrative covering. We talk about this idea often of having a really wide open door on the front, but man, that back door needs to be super small, super challenging. And essentially what that means is it's really hard for people to come into your building and leave not being seen, not being noticed, not being engaged. And so much of that happens with the operational administrative side of things. Are we intentionally living that way? So I think it's great to have you on, great to hear just bits and pieces of your story. And I agree. I think as we go through some of our questions for you today, that we'll really find just the heart of your story. So we'll jump in and let's have a little bit of fun with it. So first question for you, I think we got to hear a little bit of it just even in your story. Man, when did you look at this and go, man, church operations, this is it. This is the calling. man, this is what I want to spend my time doing?
Yeah, I'd spent most of my life, in the athletic world. Not that I'm a stud athlete, but I was around athletics. Like I said, I was an athletic trainer in college. And then jumped right into coaching and coached for a number of years and worked hard at being a good coach. Um, when I gave my life to Christ and was discipled and trained, I was certainly on the fast track. Just a couple of years later, then I was on a church staff. And
Wow.
I didn't have like I said, I didn't have a church background. I didn't have a seminary degree. I didn't even have, classes in organizational leadership, but I did have my background of coaching, to fall back on. And what I was surprised by, Van, is the parallels between coaching. I mean, for me, let me just give you a couple of them I was thinking of. One is fundamentals, huge in coaching. There's fundamentals, there's basic things that you got to get right in leading a church and church ministry. Man, you can't you can't get away from. You got to go back to the very fundamental blocking, tackling. This is a football. It's the same thing with church. Like sometimes church ops just comes back to those fundamentals, those common sense principles of what it takes to lead a team and lead an organization and those kind of things. And so I thought about that. And I don't have a ton of time to go into all that. I got a lot of football analogies and stories, but then I found, like teams that do well, they find a system that fits their players and they run that system well. And they believe in the system. And you know what? It's not, as you know, it's not that much different in a church. You got to have a few things that you believe in, a system that you believe in, and you run that. That's the pieces of the organization that keep it moving, that bring clarity, that cause growth and, make it reproducible and really brings church health. It's like, I'll talk a lot about systems today, A, because I'm a football coach, B, because, understanding this principle saved my church ops life. We'll get into, but, it's those pieces that are critical. So there's a system. Then you have to get other people to run your play. That in football terms, we call that execution. You have to execute. The team that executes wins. And it's the same in the church world. It's like, hey, I can't lead this whole church by myself. I can't do everything we need to do. So what I have to do is I've got to stress execution. I've got to be able to get a bunch of untrained, uneducated fishermen to run a play, and do it effectively. And then I thought about game days. There's, football coaches, we only got 10 of them, 10 game days. That's your life. In the church world, we only get 52. And it's amazing because that game day comes around with amazing regularity. You have Sunday's coming, baby. And
Sunday's coming.
And that's where, that's so much of what we do of leading services that are transformative and change people's lives. And as no matter how anointed and good the preaching is and all that, as you know, there's a lot more that goes into that. A lot of people have made decisions whether they like the place before they ever hear the preaching. And it's everything from the parking lot to clean restrooms to effective children's ministry to hospitality, all that stuff. And oftentimes in church ops, especially, in what you're really targeting, it can all fall under one person that's leading volunteers, servants in that area. So, man, game day is huge. There's the scoreboard. Obviously, the scoreboard, whether you win or lose, I mean, our scoreboard is vital, Van. It's eternity. It's souls. It's lives changed. I mean, that's our scoreboard. Of course, we can look at some growth metrics and, number of people coming in and out. We can have some basic growth metrics, but we have, our scoreboard in essence is eternal. And then every football team, every coach is part of a staff. And so there's all those staff dynamics that I took with me and brought into the ops world. And so you think about that, that was huge. And then the last part, kind of a part B to that question about how did I get into it? How did I figure out it was important and those kind of things is, it really come down to leadership. I It's one thing to be, charismatic, anointed, gifted. You can do all that when you're an island to yourself, when it's only about you. But all of a sudden, as a church ops person, you are leading a whole cast of characters, and leadership really is more about leading them well. And so I realized, man, if we were going to have a team, a dynamic team, an effective team, a healthy team, then I had to do a good job with putting all of these pieces in place just to keep people confident, happy, full of faith, and doing the things that, God called them to be. So I realized as a leader, it wasn't just enough to be gifted. It was important to put an infrastructure in place that not so gifted people can execute, can run, can feel good about, be confident about what they're supposed to do. So I hope that helped answer the question.
Yeah. I think it definitely did, and I love just how you're pulling from your background. And I think one of the things you mentioned is so important. Man, I didn't have a seminary degree. Man, I didn't have an operational or a management degree. So often, I think folks who are in our position, you kind of look at that parallel and go, well, the lead pastor has a theology degree. He's got his MDiv, man. He's got all of these things in place that make him a credible leader when it comes to the gospel. And I think one of the things we find often is I've said this before, there's no school for this.
No.
Man, I wish there was, where it's like, man, you can go, and hopefully we'll get a little bit into some of the stuff you're doing, which I'm so excited about, because it's kind of changed. It's having to make me take that statement back a little bit. But man, we get to that place where are we pulling from? And I love just the idea that, man, you've got something in your background you can pull from. You've got lessons you've already learned that you can potentially apply to what you're doing. And I love the focus on leadership. And man, one of the other things you said I think is so important. It's creating systems that anyone can use. I think one of the places we often get super complicated is you come up with this really fancy system, and it's like, oh, this will make things so great. But then you try to roll it out to folks, and they're so confused because there's too many steps or too many pieces. So being able to think simply, I love just the heart behind it and thinking with focus and intentionality. So, man, so as you think about that piece, I think we've already, again, heard a little bit of this, but you kind of think about where you lead from and those important pieces. We hear the leadership in there, man. We hear the system in there. If there was one resource, you go, if you can start anywhere, if you're trying to look to quantify this and figure it out, is there one or any resources you'd recommend as this is good learning?
Yeah. Well, yes, I want to kind of go back to the first part of what you said there, just because I think it's important. Like, where do you lead from is a beautiful question.
Come on.
You talked about, pulling from your past. Yeah, I think everybody's going to do that. I think, God doesn't waste anything. Whatever got you to where you are, that's what you have to use. I'll never forget, man. Funny story, sidetrack. I think it'll encourage people. I'll never forget. I was in a famous restaurant one time called Waffle House. And I was having some coffee, and I had putting some sweetener in my coffee and all that. And, those people that work at Waffle House, they're on it. I mean, they were coming by filling my cup up all the time, and my coffee ratio continued to, get off. And then so I was like, hey, I need a little more sweetener in here. So I was like, hey, do you have any more sweetener? And she was like, no, honey, we're all out. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? You fill my cup. I was being kind. I was playing with her. So you fill my cup up. She said, well, honey, you better stir what you got. And so I was like, now that is a leadership principle. So I just learned to stick that spoon in there and stir whatever and settle to the bottom.
Come on.
The coffee, and that's what we have to do sometimes.
I love it.
Total rabbit trail. Thank you for letting me take it. More important than that is where I lead from. I really, in our role, it is critical to lead like Jesus led. I think it is critical to lead from a place of serving. Jesus was so clear. He laid down a title so that he could wear a towel. And I think what I love is in this role, and not everyone may agree with me. There's a lot of different leadership philosophies. I think it's a chance for us to right side up the kingdom, or you could call it upside down kingdom, but I call it right side up because this is the way Jesus intended it. And that
Yes.
is our role is to serve, is to make those other people great in our organization. And
Come
so
on.
if you really come into this role of not, I don't want to just manage people and get things done through people, but God has a plan, has a vocation, a calling, a destiny for those people that he surrounds you. And if you can help them discover that within your organization, I think you've struck gold. And so I say, say it this way, because you talked about cleaning toilets and you talked about toilet paper and doing all the things. We've done it all, taking out the trash. We've done it all, and I'm sure if people are listening to this, the people that are really bent towards listening and growing in this area, they understand what we mean when we're serving. But I like to take it up one notch, and that is this, Van, that when we say serving, we are talking about doing the things nobody wants to do or being willing to do those things.
Come on. Come on.
But I think that you can lead by serving, but I also believe you can serve by leading. And so God has placed you in that role. He's called you the leader or given you some title. People look to you for direction, for instruction, for inspiration, and all those things. And I think when we come to work every day, if we'll understand, man, I'm here to serve, and part of my serving is leading well, then where I lead from is really that heart that Jesus demonstrated of serving, helping other people be great, helping them reach their destiny. And so I think that kind of changes the dynamic of why you show up to work every day.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I love just the intentionality. I think when you talk about that heart and why you show up, man, making sure you're doing it not just to get stuff done, because we can definitely fall into that trap. I think we've all anyone who's been in this role has been guilty of showing up and asking about all the stuff that needs to be done before shaking a hand, before saying good morning, man, before checking in on people. So I love that, just that wisdom to stop and go, man, there's a purpose and a plan behind every person that's here. And more than getting things done, our role is to really help those people find their calling and step into the things you would have them be doing. So it's just a beautiful place. So
And
go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say we got a little more time. So we're going to flash around these last couple of questions because I want to get the content to folks. I want them to be able to hear. So when you think about those resources, man, what's that thing?
Yeah. So again, back to my coaching. Coaches were known for going to clinics to hear from other coaches. And we called them coaching clinics. Now, I've heard from amazing coaches. I've heard, of major university programs. I coached high school football. There's no way I could take everything that they did and try to implement it where I was, but I could take one thing. And so I would just go to those clinics looking for one thing to make me a better defensive back coach, a better weight coach, a better whatever I was doing at the time. And it would make me better. It would make our kids better. It would make the team. It would make the team better. And so I took that same learning principle that coaches. It's just like part of the trade. Like good coaches are going to be good learners. I think good leaders are learners, and I think we got to continue to learn. And so one of the guys, just for time here, and maybe you can have me back. We could talk a lot more about this, but I found a guy named Nelson Searcy, Pastor Nelson had planted a church in New York. Since then, he'd also planted in Boca Raton, Florida. He was out of Rick Warren's staff, and he really just had a mind for church organization, organizational leadership. And again, I had the interest and I had the pain of not having it. And so I said, I've got to, there's nothing like pain to cause you to,
get going,
Google something to find somebody that can help relieve the pain, right? And he was a godsend. I will say, he's still active. I know you'll post it in the notes, churchleaderinsights.com. I will warn everybody that he is a massive marketer. Like you're going to get about 90 emails, but eat the chicken and throw out the bones, like we say in Tennessee or now in Texas. There's a lot to learn from him. He's got a series of books and things that, are very helpful. And And yeah, it does come with. He is a great marketer. Let's put it that way. But what I learned mainly from him, and this is what I would love, like you said, maybe come back and break some of this down and talk more specifics if you want to have me, is looking at the church a lot like we would look at the human body. The human body is made up of all kinds of systems that are sort of interlinked and working together. And you have those systems, whether they're fully developed or not. My muscular system is designed to give me exactly what it's giving me right now. But I can focus on my muscular system and I can get stronger. The same with the circulatory, the respiratory, all those systems. Churches are made up with those same things. There's a strategic system. There's assimilation system. Really, he breaks it down to 8, evangelism system, like a volunteer system, discipleship, small groups, all of those things, stewardship. And what I love about it is because, like you said, you can get overwhelmed with all the things that need improvement, that need your attention and all that. And having it broken down into these systems, can let you empower others to lead in some of those areas and like be responsible for them. And B, allow you to kind of set 7 things aside and let's work on one and let's improve this one. And then let's set that aside and let's work on the next one. And as you do that, then you get, sort of a total body makeover in the church and you're able to work on that. So the idea really of taking this big thing called local church and breaking down this area of operations into systems saved my life. And so that would be, it's a great resource that everyone can find. And I would love to come back and talk about it. Everywhere I go, that's what I talk about because it was life-changing.
Yes. We will definitely get you back to be, man, hopefully we can do maybe a couple of episodes worth so people can kind of hear this information. Because I think one of the things you mentioned, it's like my best shot at this point is if I get online and I Google things, but then I'm living in this place of does it work? And man, am I just going to get sucked into the marketing realm? And it might be useful, it may not. So one of the hearts for this podcast is really to filter through the information to kind of give you guys a try this. Look at this system. I love being able to help you all divide the chaos, divide all the things that are pulling on your attention, asking you to fix them, and to create this space where you can remove, those places where often I find that people who do what we do often become overwhelmed. They become disillusioned with ministry because they don't have a plan. There's nothing being offered other than, hey, do more, fix more, get this done, figure this out. And to be able to provide those things that allow you to section things. And I think one of the other things I think you said was so important. It's okay to set something down for a minute, to focus on a component, get that muscular system going before you try. You can't fix all of it at once. So
right.
Being able to just accept that, hey, some things aren't going to be great in the beginning, and that's okay. But if we're willing to work consistently and efficiently and boil it down to these systems that we can focus on, it becomes more palatable and there's more that can be done with it. So it's beautiful. So
the church ops guy, Van, basically person, you may pick it up for a while, but it's great to have a team around you where you're like, they might not lift it like I do, but I can let them hold it while I pick up another weight and lift it. And so, there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, there's so much there. That is a podcast within itself, just talking about people management and, man, how do you pick something up long enough to get it going, to hand it off, and building and cultivating that. So we definitely, we'll find a window to hit on that. So last little couple of minutes, we've got 2 more questions for you. Man, if you're looking at a younger version of yourself, you're looking at that, that 22, 23-year-old version of you, man, what is something you look at and say, hey, spend time here, invest here, focus your efforts here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to say, even in an administrative role, when it can be challenging sometimes, passion for Jesus and staying close to him, there's nothing better than that. Number 2, really valuing people, because you have a job because somebody's showing up. If no one shows up, you doing something else. So you got to, I can't say that. But if I were going to say one thing to my younger self, and that's a great question, it would have to be that I would be a clarity ninja. I would,
Mm,
and I don't know if you expected that, but it would be, I feel like
yes.
so many things may be clear to me. They may be in my brain, but they weren't clear. And when I start thinking about clarity, a lot of these things I'm sure I've stolen from somewhere, but clarity isn't everything, but it changes everything. I love that.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
good. Yeah.
it change when you're clear about it. It changes everything. It creates certainty. Clarity creates certainty in uncertain times.
Yes.
Like things can be crazy, but man, if you're clear about it and you can give people clear steps, even in the midst of the chaos, it brings certainty, which builds trust, builds confidence, all those things. We're talking about everything from a new believer that's on some kind of discipleship path to a staff member that's just trying to get through the day, right?
Come on. Come on.
Clarity, I love this. Clarity is kindness. And so
Ooh.
the clearer we are, it is being kind. Uh, uh, a lack of clarity is unkind, or unclear is unkind. I mean, so we have to have hard conversations. We have to be clear about people's performance. We have to be clear with hey, this is where you're at today. But that is actually loving them,
Yes.
and clarity creates momentum. And what I love about it is momentum without resistance. When
Mm,
when everybody's on the same page going in the same direction, there's momentum and there's no resistance. Oftentimes the resistance we feel in an organization is the fact that we just haven't been clear. And so you have dissenting voices. I mean, it's like if my big family gets in the car and I've made my mind up, we're going to, Chick-fil-A.
come on.
There, not everybody gets a vote. Nobody's confused. We didn't go to Cane's. We didn't go to we didn't go to Taco Bell. We're not going there. We're going where I said we're going. And that clarity creates it kind of quiets all those dissenting voices and gives you momentum without resistance. And it really allows people to run with the vision and walk in the purposes that you set out, the church has set out. And so I would have fought a lot more for clarity in my language, in my processes, in my procedures. I would have gone everywhere from the vision statement to the lowest level and said, are we clear about where we're going and how we do things? And I think that would have probably be it. I think there were times as a young leader, senior pastor, different roles I had, I just wasn't clear enough to help get us where we needed to go. So I would be a clarity ninja.
Clarity ninja. I love it. I agree. I don't know if this happens to you, but man, I think because we think about it so often, it's those shower moments. Often I have to be careful that I am not bringing my team in halfway through in the conversation. I've already had the first bit with myself, and
That's
I can
right.
live with this expectation that they are already on board. And I start with the middle step, and they're confused, and it's very easy to then get frustrated. Why aren't you guys moving with me? I think that's such a great, honest question to ask ourselves. Man, have I been clear before I get frustrated, before I feel like I'm being challenged, stopping and asking, man, have I been clear? Not just asking myself, but asking my team, man, do you have the clarity you need to move forward?
Yes.
Are there
Yes.
questions? Are there gaps in how I function? And I think that's the danger and the joy of thinking about it all the time. So I love it. I think that's a great piece for our folks who are working in.
That's good.
Oh yeah. So I just funny part as we're almost at time. Just before we started our time today, I had one of our administrators here in the office with me. We've got a new evaluation process we're rolling out for our team. I think it's great to not only evaluate down, but you should be able to evaluate out and up. I think we get a lot of great information, and I was working on this launch for us to do that, and I'd written up all the information, and I went, hey, look this over. Does it make sense? Do you understand it? Years past, I would have sent that bad boy out and then gotten all this section back going, I don't know what you mean. What are you talking? And it's now like, nope, get this in front of some people, have them look at it, get their opinion, you save yourself so much time and energy and frustration. So, man, Pastor Mike, it's been great having you on. I hope folks are encouraged by this. Man, last thing, because I always want to leave room for platform, because I feel like when I'm talking with folks who do this, they always have something that they've got in the oven. There's something they're working on. There's this next step they're focused on to help better church management, church operations, to be able to be better at planning churches. So, man, anything you're doing right now that you want to share with our folks?
Yeah. For the last year or so, my project has been, I got a call, and this is, again, it's crazy. It's like, hey, Pastor Mike, we want you to be the director of our church planting residency. And, I said, great. And said, well, let me think about it. And, let's have some more conversations. I hung up that phone call and I said, what is a church planting residence? I didn't even know. I had to Google myself, like what it was like. And basically what we've done here, Mid-Cities is a great church out here in West Texas. It's Mid-Cities because it's midway between Midland, Texas and Odessa, Texas, which for an old football coach is the home of Friday Night Lights. So it's like football country out here. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Oil, football, the desert. There's not much to do other than those things and work on the church. So it fits me great. Van, so I have built a church planting residency program pretty much from scratch. We have 2 residents in the program right now. And the idea is that we're going to raise up the next generation of successful church planters who can plant sustainable, reproducible churches. And, just again, drawing from all the wealth of the things I've done over the last, 25 years or so, and building a program that would equip them to go further faster. When I was sent out to plant my first church, I literally said, here's the directions. Here is $10,000. Start next month. And I had no idea what I was doing. So as you see, there's a common theme, Van, that I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try to find it out. Follow the prophetess Dory that says, keep on swimming. And you just keep swimming until you figure it out. So, that's what we're doing now. And so it's really cool. They get practical classroom experience. They get experience in the churches. I have this thing called the garage, where in the garage we're tinkering on the actual church they'll plant, and then all those kind of things. And so it's a lot of fun. It fits, like, for me, my wife's like, this job is custom fit for you because all you're doing is coaching. So we just come back to that theme. You're just making people better. You're helping them become who God called them to be. And so that's why we packed the U-Haul van up and drove 12 hours from beautiful green Nashville, Tennessee to out here to West Texas. And it's been great. And I really have enjoyed serving with Pastor Daniel Stevens and the team here. It's been wonderful. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, man, definitely. We'll be praying for that, believing for that. I think that's so vital especially when we look at our podcast. So often we said, man, there's no school for this. So that you're really creating this space where you can get the reps in. Because it's like, I can get the education in some places, but man, to really get the practical reps, the doing is so important, because then you walk away with that knowledge.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Church planning is a lot of times you're the number 1 and the number 2 and the number 3. I mean, you just got a lot of good people that want to help you, but you start it all by yourself and you look for that number 2 quickly. You try to find somebody that stayed late for service and you're like, oh, that's my number 2. We look for that Van Dobbins that just hung around too long. And then that man can take some weight and responsibility off me. And that's what church planners have to do it all. And so they're learning everything. In fact, those systems and things I talked about, Van, we start that next semester. We're going to start to go week by week through all of those church systems. So I'll be fresh by the time you have me back on here.
I'll just be back right on that. Whatever week you're teaching, let's find a window to get on. So, man, thank you, Pastor Mike, for being on. Man, thank you for just sharing your heart your experience, your knowledge on this topic. I think there's a lot of folks out there who are doing this work and definitely feeling the frustration and the weight of it. So, man, to our listeners, I hope this encouraged you today. Hopefully, man, you got some answers. You were able to get some directions, some clarity. Just always reminding yourself, man, the amount of your resources don't speak for you, but how you use them says everything. And so making sure that you're stirring that cup, just like Pastor Mike said, you're in the Waffle House, man. You're stir what you got. Stir what you got. Use what's there, man, because it is possible. It is possible to do the impossible with less. So thank you guys for listening. Pastor Mike, thank you for being on. Until the next podcast, the next episode, please please share, rate wherever you're viewing this content. And definitely, like I said at the beginning, if you've got any questions for Pastor Mike or for me, and get on the Facebook page, Church Ops 500. Get on there, ask questions. You can also ask within the YouTube format, and then we'll get back to you as much quickly as we can with answers. But more than anything, continue to share this content. Hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. And until the next time, come on, keep doing the impossible with less.
Thanks, man.